and welcome to the Open Era podcast. My name is Devang Desai. This week, it's a bit of a special Open Era. Simon is currently traveling to Toronto as the National Bank Open concludes. So it'll be a bit of a change up. This week, as a part of my day job, I was co-hosting a daily radio show on location at the Toronto event that featured the ATP's best. So over the course of the week, we got to interview quite a few cool people in the tennis world. So we wanted to play those interviews for you now. And then later this week, Simon and I will reconvene and we will cover what happened in Toronto and Montreal in more depth. But for today, it's going to be myself's voice and Jesse Rubinoff, my co-host at Fan 590, who you'll hear talking to Frédéric Fontang, coach of Félix Auger-Aliassime. We talked to him before Felix had played his opening round match. Obviously, that was a disappointing loss to Max Purcell, but we talked to Frédéric about Felix and his poor season so far, tough season, how he's finding battling against what's been a really rough year and the injuries that have been involved with that as well. So we talked to Frédéric. We also talked to Guillaume Marx, who works at Tennis Canada, head of performance, but also someone that's worked with Felix for a long time as well. We talked to him after Felix lost to Purcell, so a bit more of a post-mortem as well as a look at some of the other Canadians in attendance at Montreal and Toronto. And then finally, you're going to hear Blair Henley's voice, who, if you follow tennis, you know her well, all over tennis platforms, social media platforms, covering both the ATP and WTA so well. She was on site in Toronto, so we got a chance to talk to her about all things tennis. So hope you enjoy this trio of interviews that we will cut together here. As for the tournaments itself, Jannik Sinner, first Masters Series title, third time's the charm, really blitzing Alex de Minaur off the court. Poor Alex de Minaur, really, really terrific week in terms of who he beat, how many matches he had to win, how far he had to dig, especially in that Taylor Fritz match. He was really, really good, and it bodes well for him going forward into the hardcourt season. But I think this is about Jannik Sinner doing what he had to do, not the hardest pass, enjoyed a walkover as well with Andy Murray not being able to play. So not a murderer's row exactly, but Jannik Sinner took care of business, and now he's a Masters Series champion, and it adds to the intrigue as we get closer to the US Open in Montreal. Really bad luck with the weather this week, and I don't think that's an excuse, but it might explain why we had some of the results we did. The big three on the WTA not making the final. Instead, it was Jess Pegula and Ludmila Samsonova playing two matches on a Sunday, which is obviously tough to do. And as I record this right now, Jess Pegula looks like she's on her way to winning in Montreal. But as I said, we're going to talk way more about what happened this week in depth with Simon. When he gets settled in Toronto, perhaps we'll do it in person together, which is a very rare occasion, but always nice. But for this week, hope you enjoy the interviews we did down live at Sobe Stadium, live on location at the National Bank Open in Toronto. Myself, Jesse Rubinoff, talking to Frédéric Fontang, Guillaume Marx, and Blair Henley coming up next.
Why don't we bring in Fred Fontang, coach of Félix Auger-Aliassime. Now, Fred, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I know we're not in Montreal, Felix's hometown, but we are here in Toronto. How does it feel to be in Canada for Canada's Open?
No, I feel like for Félix and for the Canadian player, it's great to be able to play at home, in their country, because all the year they are like playing outside. And to have like all the fans and all the support, on the court, it's extra power.
You mentioned the whole year playing outside and following Felix this season. How would you describe his year so far? Obviously up and down, but he comes into Toronto looking to right the ship.
Yeah, it's like the competition is like there's a lot of bumps. He finished last year with like his best season, finished number 6, winning the Davis Cup. And unfortunately, since the beginning of the year, especially after the first 2 months, he gets an injury in just before Doha, the tournament on Doha. And he was like playing with that Indian Wells when he lost in quarter to Alcaraz. And then after we had struggled like to find exactly what we need to do for the treatment of the knee. So it was like, oh, do I have to play? I have to play with the pain. So he was struggling a lot. And the positive thing now is like since 4 weeks he can practice normally, with the right intensity. So we are in this process.
In listening to you in interviews and listening to Félix in interviews, you're both very confident. You have a relaxed mindset about where Félix is, despite obviously having to deal with the injuries. How do you manage to keep the confidence level so high when the results maybe aren't where you want them to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a step-by-step, process. Since he's young, we know that the competition you will have like up and down, or with the results, or with the body, or whatever. So of course, this is the first time that Félix has to deal with an injury and being like in the top 10. That means when you are top 10 player, you have to be ready for every tournament and to compete well. So it's another learning experience. But to keep this confidence, it's just about. Because Félix is not like he built a house, with good foundation. So that means you have to be strong when you have like adversity, and because the base are strong, so he will rebound.
Not going to get blown over by the wind like we have right here, right now.
Frédéric, you've coached a lot of players, and from Jeremy Chardy's career from youth to senior, Caroline Garcia, Vasek Pospisil. Needless to say, you've been around the game for a long time. I wonder, in your sense, for a coach, what has changed the most when it comes to relating with players, seeing where players are coming from? How has that evolved over the years since we've gotten more technology, more video, and coaching has kind of adapted?
Yeah, it's a good point because it's exactly the role of the coach. When I was player, we had one coach, but sometimes we were alone. And the evolution of the coaching now on the tennis is more like a role of team manager.
Right.
And of course, you're still on the court with your player, try to improve him technically, tactically. You are the guardian of the process, but being team manager because every player in the top 50 are at least 3% in the team, and with Félix, we have 5-6 persons. So it's really the evolution is there.
What are the goals long-term for Félix? Obviously, I think when you go out every single time, you want to try and win a match. But when you guys are thinking about the long-term projections for Félix's career, obviously with him being so young, what sort of goals do you guys set for Félix down the road?
Yeah, of course, Félix he has been number 6 in the world, and since he's young, he's have a great potential. So he was able to do it, to go to the top 10. And of course, Félix has the potential to win the big tournaments. The ultimate goal for a tennis player and for Félix is to win the first Grand Slam and to go further, of course. But I will say that this is the game. This is the player that want the results, But there is also the role of the team around the player is like to keep it as a process, because to win a Grand Slam is the consequence of like being better every day and to improve like in every domain every day. That's the mindset that we have to stick on.
Yeah.
Félix has a lot of fans, but I think he got more fans or garnered more fans from Breakpoint on Netflix, in which we got a behind-the-scenes view of how intense this sport can be, how lonely it can be, how isolating it could be. We saw you, Frédéric, in some of those shots as well. Tiny bit. Should have been more, in my opinion. What was that like? What was that the cameras following you guys and very personal moments and emotional moments? That was a very challenging Roland Garros tournament.
Yeah, it was interesting because we had like a camera and people were like following us in the Masters and the Grand Slam. And I will say that it's not so easy like to have like, to be natural when you have like, but it's like always, it's a good experience. And because they were professional, it was a good experience. And for Félix, they are more used. The players are more used to have this. For the coaching and stuff, it's like it's less natural, but was good. And it was of course because he had a great year, so it's make it like more fun for the fans,
Yeah, and it's just walking around here at this tournament, a lot of fun things for fans to do. So again, if you're walking by, you want to come say hello, feel free to come do that. Félix wasn't the only person who was featured in Breakpoint, obviously, and we have the big three. I don't want to say Novak is on the way out because we saw how competitive he was in the Wimbledon final against Carlos Alcaraz. But certainly there seems like there is this new generation, this new era of tennis that the young guys are starting to really push here. How do you feel about the direction of the ATP now with Roger retired, Rafa near the backstage of his career dealing with injuries, and Novak, I guess, is still around, but also getting up there in age?
Yeah, definitely. That's we can see that it's more opportunity for the other player to win Grand Slam because the big three they won like more than 80% of the big tournaments.
They won a few.
Yeah.
So more points here. Alcaraz took 2.
That was amazing.
That's credit for him. But I will say that the tennis now it's going more and more. There's less and less margin between the players. You know, the level of the players in one match is everybody. I mean, the top 100. You know, even if you are top 10, you know, in one day you have to be ready because the level between the player is very very small, and it will be more and more like in golf. Yeah, I will say a little bit. So that means, of course, with the consistency, with the year, you will find the ranking. You know, the best player will be the best. But now you have to be, you have to be like ready because everybody knows how to train physically, you know, technically, tactically, the information, the statistics. You know, everybody, know the ingredients. Still, of course, you have to find the right alchemy for your player. But it's going to be really interesting for the fans because the level of tennis is really good now.
Just as an observer, Frédéric, from watching on TV at home, we hear announcers talk about, they worked on their serve, or they improved their backhand, or their forehand is more consistent. Now, I'm wondering during a season, because we know the off-season in tennis doesn't exist, there's no off-season, how realistic is it to have a player mechanically change something in their backhand during the season? How long does that take to implement into a match? Because it feels to me like there's really no time to get that all together.
You get the point, you know, and we were talking with some coaches this morning, like about that. You know, it's about the technical fundamentals. If they are not working when they are young, right, you have no time. When you are at the high level, you know, it's like when you build a house. You know, if the foundation are not there, you have no high level. You have no time. But you can clean it up a little bit, the techniques, you know, but you cannot change like really because it's they are like playing 25 tournaments during the year. So and when you go into the technique, your player is start to think, you know, it's not automatic, and the tennis is about like instinct, you know. So but still, as a coach, that's why I did this choice myself as I was a former tennis player, and I learned how to teach tennis, you know, during 10 years in my academy. So I will say it's important to have these skills to be able to also like to implement some technical work here and there during the year, and this is a methodology that the coaches need to have at the high level because you don't have time. So, but when you have like a small window, you can develop your player.
Felix is so good all around, but if there's one thing that you emphasize to him in practice, what would that be?
I mean, for Felix, it's about like this having this consistency,
right?
Because we know that his athleticism is a very high level. You know, the serve, the forehand, you know, is very. He's hitting hard from the baseline.
Total
package, total package, but. Like to go to the next level, you know, it's like to do that, but more consistently in the big tournaments. This is the challenge. You know, Alcaraz was able to do that. You know, so everybody has to find his own way. You know, but it's the consistency. That's it. The top level he has it. You know, he has it inside. No, but he has to be like more consistent. So then it's like it's a puzzle. It's like not okay. We have to improve that. It's like little bit everywhere. Yeah.
You spend a lot of time with your players as a coach. I can only imagine how much time. Maybe too much time? You're smiling, so I feel like it might be too much time. But obviously that goes a lot into the relationship and how you get along. And from the outside, Felix seems like just an easygoing, really good kid. His family seems great. I'm curious, as you've been able to see him kind of grow up from up close, what's been the most impressive thing to you from Felix the person?
Yeah, when you mention like that, for me, it's a choice. You know, I have 2 kids, one family, but they are 21, my boy, and 18, Eloise, my girl, not little anymore. So it's the right timing to spend a lot of time in the passion that you have, you know, and of course with a player like Felix, you know, who have like a good education. from the parents, Sam and Mary, they gave him like the right balance, and like this, you can really like spend a lot of time, of course, to work on the tennis, but also to continue, because as a coach, you have a role also of education, because you are older. I'm 53, Félix is 22, and he has a team around, I'm not alone. We are like always like the team around the fitness, the physio, the agents, there's this family traveling. So we are trying to keep to enjoy life, to have like some subject of conversation different, because at one point you need to be also like a good person, and of course a good tennis player, but there's a life after the tennis, after practice. So Félix is very, very good with that.
You mentioned he's 22 years old. His birthday always happens at the National Bank Open, right? His birthday is tomorrow. Any special plans? I know he's got his first match tomorrow, but any special plans if he does end up winning on his birthday?
It's the best present.
It's the best present you can get. I know obviously a massive moment for Canadian tennis came last year at the Davis Cup. And one of the special things about this tournament this year is that at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Center Court, the Davis Cup honorees are going to be honored at Center Court here. What do you think that's going to be like for you and for Félix and for the rest of those that are going to be honored? Because it was such a special moment for tennis in this country.
Yeah, it's good for Canada, because like the recent year with a lot of good players like Milos, Jenny, they opened the track, they opened the road, and after Félix, Denis, Bianca, it's great, because you can see that tennis in Canada is growing, and like with the win of the Davis Cup is like a kind of graal, with the Grand Slam in the tennis. Mm-hmm. And it's great, because like this you open some dreams, in the little tennis players, you open, it's possible.
Oh, for sure. You're seeing it here, you're seeing all these young fans coming out to see the tennis this week.
This is like this, the circle of the positive circle is going on, and it's going to be like really like emotional, totally. It's good.
Last one for me, Frédéric. Seeing both tours, you see a lot more players that came up through the college system or NCAA. They eschewed going to the tour as a teenager. They got their education, got their degree, and then decided to go pro maybe afterwards. There's quite a few players like that now, but there's still quite a few players like your Alcaraz, like your Auger-Aliassime, who didn't do that. Have you noticed something different maybe from the collegiate players, where maybe they have maybe more top level training before they get to the pros than before? Because it seems like a lot of them are quite ready to step in and make noise.
Yeah, for me, there is like 2 points that you can see in the evolution of the career, and that make it like the player going to the college, being able to go to the pro tour is like, you can see now like after 30 years old, you can still compete, In my time, in the 90s, the career, I stopped at 29. Everybody, it was like exceptional to go more than 30 years old. Now it's like 35 is the 36. They are in shape. So that's one reason that they have time, to go to the college and to practice well, and then to go to the tour later. It's not a problem. And the second thing is like I said, the information now with the technology is like spreading, everywhere. So the level of the coaching in the world, with the video, with the statistics, the competence are like spreading easier, like with the video, or what you are technically the fundamentals, the clear video, fitness, also the mental coaching, also the stats. So that those two components, they are giving like the opportunity to some players to go to the high level, but it's also like the other part is like it's more competition. So right.
Fred, you've been so generous with your time. I know you got a really busy week, so we'll let you get out of here. But really appreciate you doing this with us today. And good luck in the tournament. Good luck tomorrow. And enjoy the celebrations of the Davis Cup tonight.
Let's go tomorrow.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, that was our interview with Frédéric Fontang. Some insight there on what's going on with Félix Auger-Aliassime as he looks to salvage what's been a disappointing 2023 campaign. All right, when we come back, we'll talk to another one of Félix's former coaches and also someone who knows Tennis Canada extremely well. It's the head of performance, Guillaume Marx, coming up next.
Let's bring in Guillaume Marx head of performance for Tennis Canada and former pro player. What a day we have developing here, Guillaume, at the National Bank Open. Milos Raonic off to the round of 16.
Yes, it's incredible. Very happy for him. I mean, it was such a long wait. We could see during his speech after the first match against Tiafoe what a relief it was for him to be able to play at such a high level and winning again today and seeing him in the third round. It's really great for him, really.
Guillaume, Gabriel Diallo playing today against Alex de Minaur. We know Gabriel went to the University of Kentucky, but obviously he's been on Tennis Canada's radar for a long time. I'm curious how the relationship started between Gabriel and Tennis Canada and how it's grown to now.
Look, it's someone that we know for a long time because he was in the youth category. He was originally obviously from Montreal, so from Quebec. We are seeing him quite often, and then he grew up in a small academy here in Montreal, and then went to the Félix Father Academy for 3 years. And because he was very much a late bloomer, and he was growing very much when he was a teenager. Like he had skinny legs. It was difficult for him to sustain some kind of intense practice. So it was a question of time, taking the time for him, and he became 18-year-old national champion, in Canada when he was 18, and then made the right choice to give himself time and go to the university. And after that, he was not playing as good as now, obviously, but we started to follow him and put on a transition program, an NTA program, to support those guys that are doing well on the ACA when they're coming back in the country during the summer, when they play the local tournaments here in Canada. It's 2-3 years that we are since during the pandemic we started this program again to support them, and Gabi really embraced what were the support, and since then he's taking off. It's incredible.
You never want to heap too much expectations on a young man like Gabriel Diallo, but it is fun to get excited about thinking where they can end up. But what do you think the ceiling is for a player like Gabriel Diallo as he continues to shine here at the National Bank Open?
Yeah, it's always difficult to go with pronostics like this, and for me, I believe he's a top 50 player, and once you get there, you never know. Where you're gonna go. He's starting long distance run as well. He has he's 22, like you said, so he has really 3-4 years where he can still develop quite a lot. And I believe he has to go step by step and go first, top 50, top 100, get in the draws of the ATP events, and then get in the draws of the bigger ATP events. But to me, is a top 50, probably more of a prospect.
Guillaume, you work as the head of performance with Tennis Canada, but you also have a long track record with working with some of the individual players that are gracing our television screens or performing in Toronto and Montreal. One of them being Félix Auger-Aliassime, who you coached almost throughout his late teen years. Félix enjoyed so much success towards the end of last year, but he's found 2023 very tough, and the injuries should not be forgotten in that in terms of how tough the year has been. But I'm curious from a bit more of the outside now. I know you're still involved in Tennis Canada, but what have you seen from Félix this year that's maybe caused some of the issues he's faced?
I think it's very simple. It's the fact that today, the margins are really pretty small between the players. At the end of the day, it's not that big, and you can only make a regular difference with your peers that are a little bit behind. If you're at 100%, it looks like it was not the case for the last few months, and the margins being so small today, if you're not competing at 98, 99%, it's at least it's almost impossible. I think he has an approach of his game that was always very based on very much on intensity and the physicality. So when that aspect is missing, that hurts him as well quite a lot. So I think that explains a little bit the curse of the year so far. But let's see. I talked to him this week, and it looks like it's since a week, 10 days, it's much better. So I think it's going to go better and better. I hope he's going to really find his level back very, very soon. But he was very optimistic for the second half of the year. So I hope that he will confirm that.
We've been talking a lot this week about how individual of a sport tennis can be and how much pressure they can be on to perform. You're all alone out there on the tennis court, and Félix obviously is going through it at the moment, despite how optimistic he seemed prior to the match. And on the WTA side, Bianca Andreescu and Leylah Fernandez having difficult years. In your role as head of performance with Tennis Canada, how do you approach the mental side of the game with the players, and how do you help them work their way through it?
I think that when they're professional, I mean, those guys, those girls, they have their own stuff and their own way of doing things. I think what we need to do is anticipate more, and it's more in the in the young categories that I think we have to put in place the right values, but as well the right way of thinking. High performance thinking, and just start talking about some issues that you may have when you're very young, and having people involved that have that know about the basics of the sports psychology, and so just starting to open and plant the seeds for the very young player, that they are open to these discussions, because there are a lot of things in time you can improve on the psychological side, as long as you've been trained to do that. So I think our role is really to plant those seeds in the mind of the players, that if you have an issue, if you feel like you're hitting you're hitting a wall and you're not feeling well, that there are solutions. In time there are solutions. If you talk about it, if you treat them, if you talk about your fears and your concerns, and at one point, having this mentality that there's nothing really bad, really having difficulties. It's just it's really making this habit very, very regular, that you can talk about it, you can act on it, and you don't have to be subjected to your emotions of the time. You have to learn how to accept that and move forward. So I think it starts with the young categories, and so they are more and more aware of what's at stake in their mind.
Leylah Fernandez still in the draw in Montreal. Guillaume, she looked really good against Peyton Stearns. It doesn't get any easier against Beatrice Haddad-Maia. Leylah's experienced a lot of success, obviously a U.S. Open finalist, but she's had to now work her way back into the tour, and her ranking has dropped a bit, so that means going through qualifiers more often. How do you communicate, or how do you help a player mentally deal with the idea that they've been to the pinnacle, they've been to the top, and now it is more of a grind, it's more of a you got to put in the work to figure out how to get back to where you were? Yeah,
so that's a very good question, because it's really not easy for anybody. I think there's I think the answer is partially in your question, is that, do you really want to go back to where you are? I think that's not necessarily the right approach. You have to try to again improve and move forward and be maybe even better, not to be living in the past too much. That's probably going to be one point, and it's always that state of mind, that this approach, that the hard times that you have, they are here for a reason, and you have necessarily lessons to learn and things to adjust, and to do differently, or to like you said, go back on doing things that were working. So I think it's all about accepting the situation and the fact that there is probably a lot of lessons to learn, and that you want to go to another point that's even better than the point you were before. And it's all about this mentality. You have to go back to what's your goal, of playing, because you have to always try to play and perform and practice with the most positive energy you can have, and not trying to catch something that's necessary in the past. So I will probably work a lot on this state of mind, but obviously it's easier said than done. And as long as I think for Leila, I think she's putting the work. Like she's very serious. She has quite good results in doubles as well. Very good, interesting results in doubles. So that I think that's encouraging her, like to go back, and that she had the potential anyway to be even better than she was.
It's amazing to see the success that Milos Raonic specifically is having so far at this tournament, now into the round of 16. And in hearing Félix Auger-Aliassime talk about this tournament and how he used to come here and watch Milos as a kid, and I just wonder what kind of an impact the success of now Felix and Denis Shapovalov and Leila and Bianca, what kind of an impact is that having on the popularity of tennis at Tennis Canada?
But I think it's huge. I mean, I've been on the grounds every day since the start, and the family weekend is packed. I mean, we actually have a lot of issues of delivering, like having enough spots in the academies, in the club, so that everyone that can play can do so. So I think the impact and the popularity and the momentum is huge. I mean, there is as well the win in Davis Cup last year. I hope all the kids will have. I hope it was a huge motivation as well for all the kids to see those guys on the pictures with the trophy on the court last Monday, and it's very, very inspiring, I believe, for the kids. Very exciting, and that as well, so that shows that you can do it if you're Canadian. It's not only the others, and those role models are very, very important for the sport.
Well, we hope for more success for Milos Raonic at this tournament. Same goes for Gabriel Diallo and Leila Fernandez for sure in Montreal. Guillaume, we know you're in Montreal, so enjoy the rest of the tournament, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the tournament too. Bye.
Okay, that was our interview. Jesse Rubinoff and myself, Devang Desai, talking to Guillaume Marx. Finally, on this week's Open Era, we'll chat with Blair Henley after the break.
And now joining us here at the desk, it's our pleasure to welcome tennis host, writer, and reporter Blair Henley. Blair, thank you so much for doing this today.
Hi, guys. I'm so glad to be here.
It has been a whirlwind 2 days. We had some weather issues to deal with yesterday, and now you can, I'm sure, hear it a little bit at least. The wind is blowing, but how exciting is it just to be here in Toronto from National Bank Open?
Well, this is my first time here. I am fortunate enough to work at tennis events all over the U.S., really all over the world, but this is my first time here. I am so impressed. And what's a little breeze, It's keeping us cool up here in the upper deck.
Oh, that's great.
Blair, if people follow tennis, they should know who you are, because I feel like you do some of the best social content in the game, as well as interviews at so many events. But some of the interviews you did for this event I found exceptionally hilarious and revealing in terms of what we learned from the players. And I think that's where I wanted to start. The sport is interesting. It's unique. They spend so much time alone. We see them alone a lot. We don't really get a huge glimpse into their personalities. You have been able to in several different ways. But I'm curious, what's maybe your favorite part about that aspect of the job?
Yeah, I think just what you said is seeing those personalities, and it is my passion in the sport of tennis to be able to share those with tennis fans who may not be getting the up close and personal look all the time. I thoroughly enjoy being able to get those bits and pieces that maybe show fans something that they didn't already know about their favorite player. Believe me, there are some very intense tennis fans out there who know a whole lot, but I know that I'm very fortunate to get that one-on-one time. For instance, here we had the players sing "O Canada." I called it a group project. It took a little bit of convincing, but again, just seeing how they dealt with the fact that they were being asked to sing on command, and they were following my voice, which I will tell you is not spectacular. It was so much fun, and they're true competitors when it comes to executing when it counts.
You played Division I tennis yourself. One of the main conversations that we've had, at least these last 2 days, is just how tennis is such an individual sport. Playing yourself, I'm sure you experience those emotions and the pressure that goes into it. A couple of the Canadians this year have been struggling with consistency, whether it's Félix Auger-Aliassime, Bianca Andreescu, Leylah Fernandez. When things are going the wrong way in your tennis career, or even for a few matches, how do you find a way to get things back on track?
Yeah, that's one of the toughest parts, really, of any sport, but tennis in particular. When you're on one of those stretches where nothing seems to be going right, I think the one thing that tennis does have to offer is the fact that there's always another opportunity. You might only have to wait a week to get out there and try it again, and sometimes it can be one single win that can turn it around. For instance, Félix Auger-Aliassime has had a tough past couple of months. Who knows what could happen here in Toronto? He plays Max Purcell first round tonight. Tough Australian. He qualified, so he has a couple matches under his belt already. Right. But again, any tournament can be the one that turns it around for any given player.
I want to stay on Félix and kind of not get a vibe check, because I think we've asked a few people, and the answer seems to be generally the same, in the sense that he's fitter than he was a few weeks ago. I think mentally he's coming out of this kind of block where he had a pretty rough French Open, rough Wimbledon. Do you get a sense that he's not at peace, but he's comfortable with where he's at this point, where he's expected to run into adversity? I think he's a really smart kid. He knows that it's not going to be smooth sailing the whole way through and all roses. There's going to be tough times, but it seems like he's trying to embrace that, but it's obviously easier said than done.
I think sometimes when you have those first couple of losses, especially as a top player, you can have a little bit of the white knuckle effect, where you are just grinding, thinking, I've got it. Why doesn't it feel good? Why aren't they falling my way? I do think sometimes when you get past those first few losses, you do get to the point where you're thinking, okay, I just have to embrace the process one match at a time. And I do get the sense, again, it's hard to get another sense with Félix, just because one-on-one, he is one of the sweetest, kindest, most polite players that I have ever had the pleasure of interacting with. So again, it's you're unlikely to get the feeling that Félix is feeling stressed in a one-on-one interaction. But I do think, to your point, that now that there have been sort of several losses in the bucket over the course of this summer, I think there is some acceptance in thinking, okay, one match at a time, deep breath, let's do this.
I coined yesterday Milos Monday, because Milos Raonic put on an absolutely incredible performance against Francis Tiafoe. What did you make of watching Milos? He was away from the game for 2 years, and the ability to come back and not only come back and perform, but deal with the tough blow that he was dealt in the tiebreaker yesterday, with a rule that I'm not sure anybody had any idea of. He certainly didn't. Just the resilience to come back and win that match, his first one back.
Yeah, I think Milos said it in his post-match interview that the one thing he had going for him is that the expectations were low. I don't think many people expected him to win that match, except maybe Milos himself. So the fact that he was able to go out without those expectations on his shoulders, I think, was huge. I am also particularly impressed by his fitness. I think it was a 2-hour and maybe 45-minute match. Yep. There is nothing that you can do on a practice court that can prepare your body for the emotions, the adrenaline of a match, and what that does to your body physiologically. So the fact that he was able to get to that third set and then close it out. But I mean, listen, anybody who has seen Milos Raonic's legs, there is power to spare in those things.
You're not the first person to bring up Milos Raonic's legs today. Ben Lewis, who was here earlier, said the same thing. Yeah, no, he's a specimen, to say the least.
I'm curious, but you're American, been to a lot of American tournaments, but you also have a gauge on what's happening in Canada. The last maybe 10 or so years, it feels like things kind of flipped or maybe weren't on the level where Canada's maybe exceeding beyond people's expectations. The American players are not having such a good run, even though we had maybe 5 or 10 women who could win any tournament at any time who were American. Now, though, it seems like we have just a ton of Americans on both tours doing quite well. I wonder, what do you attribute that to?
That's a good question. I think definitely there's a feeling probably on both sides of the tour that anyone could win on any given week. And I think that does encourage people and push people. On the men's side in particular, I feel like the women have been pretty consistent on the American side. But on the men's side, it was Taylor Fritz having a few of those breakthrough wins. Francis Tiafoe becoming a little bit more professional with the way he handles things off the court. That's been incredibly helpful for him over the past few years. Tommy Paul, who, I mean, he is one of the chillest dudes you will ever meet, and he broke into the top 15 this summer. So all those guys get along really well. I do think there's sort of a group mentality that, hey, if one of us can do it, all of us can do it.
Tiafoe, 10th in the world, 9th seeded at this tournament. If you're looking at the American male players, like, is there one that you expect to get to that next level? Because I know we're Canadian, but everybody's always looking for that next great American male tennis player, and we haven't had one in quite some time. Is there one name that you think we should circle to keep an eye on?
Oh, that's pressure there. I think a big part of it is obviously you need the talent. I mean, I think we would all kill to have Carlos Alcaraz's talent bank.
No question about it.
But on the flip side, there's a lot of belief involved, and there's a little bit of swag.
Yeah.
And I think Francis has the swag factor for sure. Taylor Fritz has the hard work. He's extremely technical in the way he goes about things. Now, again, they're all hard workers, don't get me wrong, but he is methodical with the way that he goes about things. But I would love to see over the next few years what Ben Shelton does. We might get a Carlos Alcaraz-Ben Shelton match here, but again, lefty, dynamic, has the belief factor. I think will be entertaining. Whether or not he wins a slam down the line, I'm going to be excited to watch.
I got to give my co-host credit because he brought up Ben Shelton's name no less than an hour ago.
Love it.
Well done, Devang.
I like to measure aura on a rating between 1 and 10.
Okay.
And the big three, they're not here, but they had it. Huge,
Yes.
maybe even beyond 10. There was 11, 12. I saw Carlos Alcaraz getting in one of the golf carts being driven to his practice court, and people were literally following him, flocking to him. It feels like he's getting close to 10 on the aura scale.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you there. What's so refreshing, though, about Carlos or Carlitos or Charlie, depending on who you are and what you call him, he could not be more polite, friendly, smiley, engaging in person. There's not the feeling that he would rather be anywhere but sitting in front of you answering questions, which, again, I have run into many tennis players who I've felt like that with, but it's so nice to see that with a player so young. He comes into a room, he will shake hands with every person behind the camera before he sits down. That's not something you see from every player. Just those little things, you can tell that he has been raised in a solid home, parents who had some serious manners standards, but he has a great team around him. He calls Juan Carlos Ferrero like a second father. They're so close, and that team, in an individual sport, the team is so incredibly key in kind of keeping the feet on the ground, having the aura, but making sure the feet stay on the ground, and you can have that relatable aspect as well.
I mean, he's so good. I mean, watching him at Wimbledon was ridiculous. That match with Djokovic was incredible. I think expectations are sky high for what he can do in his career. But a number of guys that we've seen on these practice courts right behind you, they're going to be, I think, up for the challenge. You have young guys, Holger Rune, Casper Ruud, Stefanos Tsitsipas. There are players that can challenge Carlos Alcaraz. Like, what do you make of the state of the top echelon of the ATP Tour at the moment?
I think it's unpredictable, which is not something we've seen on the men's side in quite some time. I mean, the majors had been dominated by the same 3-4 people for literally almost 20 years. So I like the unpredictability. And I was actually talking to an ATP colleague of mine today. He had just finished interviewing Holger Rune, and he asked Holger the question, what is the difference between you and Carlos Alcaraz? And he sat there, paused, thought about it, and said, He's from Spain. I'm from Denmark.
It's well played.
Which
well played.
I
answer.
loved. So again, there's that belief factor, I think, at the moment. Granted, do I think Carlos Alcaraz is perhaps a step up from everybody else, especially of that younger generation? Yes, but there's belief that anyone can do anything at this point.
What makes Carlos so good from someone who played very competitive tennis at a high level? What is it that makes him so, aside from the swagger and the persona that he has and the aura that we talked about, why is Carlos Alcaraz so much better than everybody else?
The word that gets thrown around a lot in reference to him is complete. And to be this complete at his age and physically, to look as physically developed as he does, I think one of the things that's maybe underrated as far as his game is his balance.
Right.
It's on another planet. His speed is obviously incredible, but he has a tennis IQ that, again, for a player his age is really mind-blowing. The fact that he just sort of knows where the ball should go, and he has variety that we also don't see. Again, I keep mentioning his age, but he's
right.
potentially has 15 plus
crazy,
more
yeah.
years on tour.
Buckle up.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that complete aspect that I think really does make everybody's brains explode.
It's a little disconcerting as a younger brother who is equally looking good. Jaime Alcaraz looks like he's going to be quite good.
Right.
That's look out, world.
Man, give me those jeans any day.
We're going to talk about what's coming up in Toronto this week because there's some really cool activations and events happening. But I just wanted to quickly touch on Montreal, Blair, and Bianca and Layla and the Canadians. And from 2019 and a bit onward for Layla having that success at the U.S. Open to now where their ranking has fallen. It's hard to get into these tournaments without a wild card or going through qualifying. It's a totally different game for them than it was. But they're older now and they have more experience. And I wonder, it's not easy, but it's maybe a different place for them to maybe tackle this as people who have been around. They've been through the rigors of the tour. It's not their first rodeo. I wonder if this will help them kind of stabilize because, like you were saying, like once you get into this hole where the losses pile up, it's really hard to pull yourself out.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. But I know I have a friend actually who's covering the tournament in Montreal, and she said she was at Bianca's press conference. And the most important thing when it comes to Bianca over the past several years has been her health. And she says she's feeling good. If Bianca is healthy, I think it's not going to be long before she gets back to the very, very top of the game. She's one of my favorite players to watch. I remember talking to Andy Roddick not that long ago and asked who is his favorite player on the WTA Tour. He's like, Bianca Andreescu. She makes you feel things when she's playing on the court, and she does. It's the energy is like not many other players that I've ever seen. And of course, I think Layla just has that earnestness to her and the hard work ethic. We know she's going to be working hard, that's for sure. So as you said, I think sometimes you have that sort of initial downturn. That's the hardest part. And then you can kind of take a deep breath, reset, and say one day at a time.
Devang mentioned some of the activations and what we have to look forward to this week. It's already been a great 2 days, but what are you looking forward to most the rest of the week here?
Well, I will say if you've never been to a tennis tournament, you have to experience it because, yes, there's tennis. Yes, you're going to get that world-class, unbelievable. You could be courtside at a practice court. You could be over on the grandstand. You could be over in the giant stadium. There are so many different tennis feels on site. But there are so many other things happening. There's great food. I just had one of the best steak sandwiches I've ever had in my life.
Oh, where was that? 'Cause I gotta go get it.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. Okay.
Gotta go to Kegs. There is live music. There are activations all over the grounds. There are autograph signings. There are player appearances. But tomorrow in particular is Pride Day. They're going to have one of their biggest Pride Day events for the day session. First come, first serve. They're going to be wristbands, fans. I know there are going to be several different groups that are invited to come watch tomorrow. So this tournament is doing big things on all fronts. They also have you guys written one of the positivity postcards for the players? Do you know about this?
No, I saw you tweeting about it though, so we're going to have to go get that done.
You absolutely do. I think the tournament in general really strives for that positivity, the inclusion, and if people aren't familiar with the positivity postcards, you can go to our little tent on site and you can write a postcard to your favorite player, and somebody on staff will vet those and then deliver them to the players. I got to see some of them myself.
Really cool, yeah.
I mean, cue the little like eyes water emoji. That was me this morning, because it's so sweet. And the players do face a ton of that negativity online in particular. That's a whole other thing. But to have that initiative here is huge.
I hope Nico Mahui's cool with me bringing up that 2010 Wimbledon match. if I write to him, just saying how much I loved it. But
Man, that is a deep cut there.
I
love
cool
that.
Yeah, we're going to have to go write our positivity notes for sure. There are so many great activations that you can check out at the National Bank Open. Blair, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. It was a pleasure catching up, and hopefully we get to do it at some point throughout the week.
I sure hope so, guys. Enjoy the tennis.
Thank you.
There you have it. That's our special Open Era remix edition. I'm not sure what you want to call this, but yeah. Some interviews we did on site. It was a thrill to be on site this week. Really something that I've always wanted to do, and I had a blast doing it. So big thanks to everyone involved at the Fan for setting that up, and especially Jesse and Tristan, who I worked with on the show and did such a great job. It was a blast, and I hope to be back there again to do something similar soon. But yeah, that's it for now. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/open era. Join us there. Get the show ad-free. Get the show early on Sundays. Plus, join us on the Discord where we're chatting tennis all the time. Like I mentioned earlier on in the episode, Simon and I will be back for a Toronto and Montreal recap as we get deeper into Cincinnati and closer to the US Open. Thank you, as always, to our producer Dylan on the ones and twos. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.